Hi, welcome to Esther's Laguna Woods Show, where every guest matters. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Jean Senna, and today we're going to talk about A Course in Miracles. Hi, Jean.
Hey, Esther, how you doing?
So nice to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
I've heard so much about A Course in Miracles. What is that?
Well, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And I brought a copy of the book, but I brought my copy.
Yes.
One of my copies, and you can't read the title anymore because I've been studying it for so long.
Yes.
The history of it is complex, so to be honest with you, I'd recommend that people go to acim.org, which stands for acourseInmiracles.org, and read the history of the book there, because it's a little bit complicated. But it took about 7 years to be put together, and it has 3 segments. One is the text, and what it is overall is a spiritual pathway to peace and love and joy. And it is a guideline, and it uses Christian terminology, but it really incorporates philosophies that are universal principles of love and acceptance, peace, and joy. So when it came to us, there were 3 parts. Book 1 is the text, which when I read it, I was lucky if I understood about 35% of it because it's a bit cumbersome. But then I liked a lot of it, so I decided to take the course, which has 365 lessons, and there is a lesson for each day of the year. So I committed myself to doing the course, take the year, and then decide whether this was a pathway for me or not. And it was fabulous. Then when I went back and read the text, I understood about 85% of it. So the lessons are very, very good. And then the 3rd segment of it is called A Manual for Teachers. But according to the philosophy in the course, we are all teachers. One of the basic concepts of the course is that there is only love and fear. You know, in our lives, we think that there are lots of emotions, but really all of them stem from either love or fear. And that the ego, defined a little bit differently than in psychoanalysis, but the ego is basically the father of fear, and the spirit is the father of love.
So you have meetings. What do you do in the meetings?
Okay, so every Wednesday, except the first Wednesday of the month, I have what's called the Soul Club, which is the Students of Unconditional Love Club. And we basically study the concepts of the course. So I will come to the class with a basic concept. I might read one of the titles of one of the lessons. And then it's an open discussion where people can safely share the struggles they're going through. That's right, what they're feeling, if they're having difficulties with their children or their grandchildren or their husband or their wife, or they're feeling lonely, or they're feeling, whatever. So then we discuss, well, how can the Course in Miracles help you deal with that issue? Everyone in the group is very supportive. Everything that is talked about there stays there. We laugh a lot. We have but the point is, this is not designed. The Course in Miracles is not designed to be merely an intellectual exercise. It is something that we want to apply to our daily lives. So if you have a neighbor who has a dog who's always barking, what do we do about that, and how do we handle that? So it's spiritual solutions to earthly problems. Okay? So I would put it that way.
Okay, so some people have a difficult time forgiving.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that really is one of the major keys to A Course in Miracles. But what the Course does, which I absolutely love, it gives us a different concept of forgiveness. Most of us tend to do what is called pardoning. rather than forgiving. It's sort of like, well, I'll never forget what you did, but I won't hold it against you anymore. So we sort of relinquish the consequences, but we don't relinquish the condemnation. Okay, so the Course in Miracles asks us to look at it this way. To look at it as if we're at a costume party.
Yeah.
Okay, in this realm.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare said it, all the world's a stage.
Yeah.
So here we are on the stage and we've got this costume party going on, and the ego is the one that defines and designs the costume. But it's just like if you had a neighbor who had a little daughter who was like 5 or 6 years old, who is an absolute angel. But she comes knocking on your door on Halloween night dressed as the devil. Okay? But we know who she is.
Yeah.
Okay? You know that beyond that costume is the delightful little girl that lives next door. Well, the Course in Miracles is spiritual, and in its foundation there is a God, and in its foundation we are the children of God, and actually we are still one, and we're here exploring the concept of separation. So each of us is wearing a costume designed by the ego, and so to forgive, you look beyond that costume and know very well that whatever that person did to you or said to you or whatever the circumstance was, it helps you get to a point in life where you see beyond the incident and you learn from the incident the lesson of unconditional love. Divine love. And so what that does is take you beyond the costume and get to the truth of the person behind the mask who is a child of God.
There's another thing that people cannot stop. Hating.
See, all hatred and prejudice comes from fear.
Fear, huh?
You see? And that's the key. And what the Course in Miracles does is helps us. In fact, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because the definition of miracle in the Course in Miracles is not like changing this water to wine, okay, which is good because wine gives me a headache, and I really don't want a headache, so I'm going to take a sip of water, okay. But in any case, the miracle in A Course in Miracles, the miracle in A Course in Miracles is when somebody changes their perception of another person or a situation from one of fear to love. Okay, so when we are hating, we're coming from the ego and we're coming from fear. So it means, and most fear comes from the concept of a potential loss. Okay, that there's either something we have that we might lose, or there's something we want that we don't have. And it doesn't have to be physical. It could be, I don't have the respect that I want to have, or I don't have, the love that I want to have in my life, or whatever it is. Okay. Now, if we buy into that we are spirit and not body, that the truth of who we are is spirit, and if we buy into the concept that spirit is whole and complete and is love, is peace, is joy, we don't have to seek outside of ourselves to find those things. They all are within us, and it's a matter of extending them.
Okay. What about dealing with loss?
Dealing with loss. Okay. It's a matter of putting things in perspective. Two of the key questions A Course in Miracles asks is, what do you value and how much do you value it?
Yeah, I want to ask you that.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so it is encouraging us to value that which is eternal, which is divine love, divine peace, divine joy. And that the things of this realm are temporal, aren't going to last. And so if we're investing everything we own into something that is of the material world, we're missing out on what is eternal. So recognizing, and this goes in with Buddhism very well. The Buddhist philosophy is saying that most of your pain is going to come from your attachments to things. So the key is to not be attached. I can love this table, but if I am attached to it and I'm afraid it's going to crack, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose it, or I'm afraid it's going to get scratched, then you see what I mean? All the fear comes up.
I'm talking about a loss of a spouse.
Well, that's difficult unless you have developed the spiritual philosophy that we don't own anybody, and that we can be appreciative of all the time that we've had with them rather than regretting having lost them. When I'm looking for that kind of peace, I tend to visualize things. So I visualize sitting on the bank of a river, and the river flows by, and sometimes it brings me things and I get to enjoy them while they're here, and then the river rises and the river takes them away, and that's okay, and then the river brings me something else. But my core peace never changes. So we can feel the loss, but the core of our being is at peace and is still with love instead of focusing on the loss.
Again, did we touch on ego and spirit?
A little bit. Yeah, ego and spirit, the difference between that is, okay, so the story sort of goes that the Son of God, which is all of us as one, decided one day to see what it would like, or questioned one day, what would it be like to be separate from God? Well, that is impossible based on the spiritual philosophy of the Course in Miracles. So what the Son of God did was make this world. Okay, we made this world, and we made this world to challenge ourselves with this concept of separation. So we have made it so that we see each other as separate, and we all believe that we're separate, but we're really one. So the Spirit recognizes the oneness and unites with others on that level, even though we may see with these eyes that we're separate.
What about jealousy? So many things.
Jealousy is a form of fear.
Is it?
Yeah, because it is the fear that this person that is in your life may leave you because of some other person or some other thing in their lives. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about jealousy of somebody that is successful or something like that.
See, now that's beautiful, because that goes right back to the questions again. What do you value, and how much do you value it? If you value love, and the best way to experience love is to extend it. Real love cannot be held within. It must be extended, or it isn't real.
Yeah.
So in the process of extending it, you can't give what you don't have. So in the process of extending it, you're experiencing the love. And when you experience divine love, divine peace, and divine joy, there is nothing of greater value. So there is, on that level, nothing to be jealous of. Now, if you weren't extending love and peace and joy, you weren't experiencing it, then you could be jealous of people who seem to be happy and have love and joy in their lives. But it's just a matter of going inward, recognizing we all have those things, and you bring it out, and then you experience it.
How about relationship? Does it teach us relationship?
Oh, yes.
The Course
yes.
in Miracles?
And it talks about special relationships, and it talks about relationships of just passing somebody in the elevator. But the key is that in every relationship, if you're recognizing that the other person is a child of God, and that you honor and respect that within them, even though you may not be able to live with that person because of certain behavior patterns, or somebody might be being abused. Of course, you don't want to stay in that environment, but it talks about how to develop relationships with respect and honor and appreciation, rather than what do you have that I need. See, it isn't based on need, because the one of the fundamental beliefs is we are whole in and of ourselves. We have no needs. Spiritually, we have no needs. Everything is within us. And so if you're in a relationship where you're healthy and they're healthy that way, then there isn't any conflict. Laura and I have been together for 41 years this month.
Wow.
And a lot of it comes from respecting and honoring each other and allowing, or not even allowing, embracing each person's freedom to live their life. And then she has a dream, so I help her achieve her dream. I have a dream, she helps me achieve my dream. So it's in that giving to each other rather than taking from each other that keeps the relationship joyful.
Let's talk about giving. Isn't it a wonderful thing?
Oh, it is.
I think people should do once a day. They should give something. They should do something nice that's going to make them happy. What do you think about that?
Well, and the course talks about that, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because giving, see, sometimes we get a little confused with giving, and we confuse it with a contract. For instance, you gave me some water, okay? Now, in most cases, people would say, you know, and I would say thank you, which I did. But what if I didn't? So somebody, you know, and parents do this sometimes. They'll give their kids something and the kids don't say thank you, or the grandkids don't say thank you. And if you are in need of the thank you, then you are not giving. You are trying to establish a contract. I do this, you do that, okay? Yes. But if we give genuinely, then we give the gift. They can do whatever they want. They can turn right around and throw it in the trash can. They don't have to say thank you. They can give it to somebody else. They can do whatever, and it doesn't matter if we have allowed ourselves to experience the joy of giving.
Yes,
and then we've experienced it. That's the gift to ourselves, is the joy that we experience from the giving. So it's important to examine, you know, are we giving to our spouses or our children or our grandchildren?
To get?
Yeah, and we have these expectations, and society has established many of these expectations. But the Course asks us to rethink every belief that we have. Where did it come from? Why do we have it? You know, my mother told me a story one time of they went to a party and her mother went with her. Okay, so that would have been my grandmother. And they went to a party and Mom put her coat and hat on the person's bed in the bedroom. That's where they were collecting all of the coats and hats, which made perfect sense. And my grandmother just got all wiggy and she said, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't put hats and coats on people's beds. Yeah. You know, well, we didn't know why until one day she shared with us about lice. Which was so much more common in her childhood. And so you didn't do anything like putting hats and coats on somebody's bed when lice were so prevalent. Do you see what I'm saying? And so where do these beliefs come from, and why are we carrying them on? You know, so we need to examine our own
I didn't
thinking.
think about it because of the lice.
Yeah, see, I didn't either until my grandmother shared it with me, and then I'm thinking, oh, now that makes perfect sense for back then, but we don't have to worry about that too much these days, you know. So, yeah, so we really need to explore, you know, all of our beliefs and where did they come from, and do we want to keep them or do we want to change them?
That's funny. Okay.
I love your laugh.
Find the power and purpose.
Yeah, find
power and purpose in life.
Okay.
How do you do that?
Well,
it's not easy, huh?
It is actually, again, you know, it goes back to those core questions. What do you value and how much do you value it?
Wow,
if I value love, peace, and joy, and the best way for me to experience that is to give it, then that's my purpose in life. Every day. Every day I get up and I ask my higher power, or whatever it is you want to call it, I get up and ask, okay, where would you like me to go today? What would you like me to do today? What would you like me to say today, and to whom? You know, and I turn that over. Now, I have my own agenda. You know, I'm going to go to this, or I'm coming to this appointment and this interview or whatever. But if something happens in life where I feel that I'm being called to do something else at that time, a friend of mine has just been in an accident or whatever, then I'm going to follow that call. God's agenda comes first. If they conflict, you know, if my agenda and God's agenda conflicts. So my purpose in life, I don't have to depend on money. I don't have to depend on other people, other than people to receive the love and the peace and the joy that I wish to extend to them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, this is so important. What do you value, and how much do you value
it?
Those
are very important questions.
This is a very important question.
Yeah.
What do you value,
and how much do you value?
Wow, this is so, I mean, this is really good question.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, that's why I loved this. And you know, the funny thing is, Esther, when I was teaching high school, I was teaching psychology and English, and in the psychology class, I don't know where this came from, but I was teaching my personal philosophy that there were only two emotions, love and fear, from which everything else. And when I ran into A Course in Miracles in 1993, and one of the first things that I read was there are only two emotions, love and fear, and that there were several other things that I had come to realize on my own, and this was saying very much the same thing, I knew that this was the path for me. But what I also love about the Course in Miracles is that it says, this is not for everybody. You know, it's not trying to say that this is the only way, or everybody should follow this, or everybody should do that. It doesn't do that at all. It just says you will know if this is yours. When you come to explore it, you will discover whether this is your path or not. You know, but there are as many paths to spiritual truth as there are people, because I believe, and the Course teaches, we are all born with that knowledge. We have just put it to bed and we've gone to sleep.
How would you know how much do you value it? You know?
Okay, by how much you do it. If I say I value love, but I'm attacking everybody all the time, okay, then obviously my behavior does not reflect that I value love. But if I am extending love, you know, throughout the day, and extending peace and extending joy, no matter what I'm doing, even if I'm teaching theater classes, my primary goal is to share love. I ask everybody if they're a hug person, because not everybody's a hug person. And anybody who's a hug person, we start the class with a hug, and we end the class with a hug. And if they're not a hug person, then I give them a virtual hug. Okay, so they get a hug and they give me a virtual hug back. In other words, love is the primary purpose. We're together to learn about theater, but love is the primary reason we're getting together, no matter what the activity is. I don't care if you're going to play tennis, or if you're playing canasta or bridge or doing theater. It's about being together and being one, and loving and honoring and respecting each other.
Wow, you know, people really have to figure out what they value, what they value. I mean, it's not easy to figure out what they really value, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
No, it's not.
No, in fact, I do an exercise in the class sometimes where I ask them to write down, what is the thing you value the most?
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
Not easy to say.
Now, a lot of people will say family, but then that really goes to love. Okay, they value their family because they love their family members, you know. So, but some people value success right now, and they measure that maybe financially, or they value or whatever. But what I love about the Hindu philosophy is that they have different 4 major pathways to God, and each one has a different some people meditate to get there. Some people do good works to get there. Some people teach to get there. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it's a recognition and an appreciation of all the different ways and pathways to spiritual truth. Now, how do you know if you have spiritual truth? The answer that was given to me during a meditation is that which comes from love and generates love is spiritual truth. That which comes from fear and generates separation is not spiritual truth.
Wow. We're running out of time.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay, let's talk about your book.
My book. Oh,
yes.
Okay. My book is Finding Unconditional Love, a Little Piece at a Time, and peace is spelled P-E-A-C-E. And this really is the story of my life, and I recommend that if anybody gets it, that they read it twice, because the first time through, you're really focusing on what happened to me. But the second time through, what I really am hoping is all of the lessons that I learned from what happened to me, and those are lessons that I'm hoping will be of value to many other people. So it's Finding Unconditional Love, a Little Piece at a Time. If you go to Amazon.com and type in my name, Jeanne, Sanner. It's just the last name's like Sinner, only the second letter's an A. But we won't go there. And it'll take you to my book. But
when did you write it?
Well, I actually wrote the original one in around 2011, but I have done a revision of it because I didn't really do much with it then. So I wrote a revision, and so this is the newest version.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, it was so enlightening.
Well, my goodness, this went very quickly.
I know.
So I guess we have to wrap this up, huh?
Yeah. Well, it was so nice having you here. Thank you so much for coming, and I'm going to have you on again.
Okay. Thank you. Now, can I end with a hug? Love you. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you for watching, and next time we'll have another interesting person.